Good morning. This is the third day of the International Space Medicine Summit, and we're very pleased to have, I think, two excellent panels today. We're starting off, the first panel is going to be on education and STEM advances. And education is a very critical issue today in today's environment. Inspiring young people to go into engineering and science, there's a great need for that. If we're going to continue the human spaceflight program, there's a great need for young people with new innovative ideas. It'll carry on the program, but over and above that, if you look at the issues that are facing the world community, the environment, healthcare, energy, there's a continuing need for young people going into engineering and science. So the panel that we've constituted this morning, I think, is an excellent one. It's co-moderated by Carl Deutsch and Bonnie Dunbar. Carl has received his PhD at Imperial College and London University and came to Canada and was involved in aeronautics and in space and played a primary role in the development of the Canadarm, which played such an important role on the space shuttle, and also was involved in the remote manipulator arm on the space station that is playing a major role today as the space station operates. He also was involved in the Canadian astronaut program and subsequently became president of the International Space University and served in that capacity for 6 years. Also served as president of the International Astronautical Federation and is now living in Victoria, in British Columbia, enjoying himself, but still involved as a consultant. Bonnie Dunbar is an astronaut that flew 5 missions in the space shuttle. Her last mission up to the Russian space station Mir. When she retired from NASA, she became director of the Museum of Flight in Seattle, Washington, and then subsequently provided the leadership at the University of Houston, where she had received her PhD for the new center, integrated center they established on science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, and then moved on to become a professor in aerospace engineering at Texas A&M University, where she is serving now. She is also a non-resident fellow here at the Baker Institute. So let me turn it over to you, Carl and Bonnie, and I'm looking forward to an excellent panel.
Well, thank you, George. I shall lead off on this one, and Bonnie, of course, is also going to play a role in this. First, let me thank you, Ms. Riley, for initiating and continuing to arrange this excellent series of International Space Medicine Summits. We also thank you for including a session on education and STEM advances every year. Bonnie and I have co-moderated the panel, and we're delighted to participate again this year. Welcome to the panel 6 on education and STEM advances. We have an excellent panel to discuss the topic, and I shall introduce each speaker prior to his or her first contribution. Every year, new facets of space medicine are revealed at these summits that demonstrate that we still have much to learn before routinely launching humans into space for long periods to destinations far from Earth. Whenever I speak to the public on space exploration, I find that the adaptation of humans to space environments creates the greatest universal interest. This is certainly worth noting as we talk about education and outreach. The Sputnik, Apollo, and Soyuz programs stimulated huge interest in science in the young. This was repeated in the early years of the space shuttle. However, by the time ISS came along, there were many technological and scientific competitors for the attention of the young, particularly in those nations that had long been involved in space flight. Space no longer had the same drawing or stimulating power for the public unless the mission was considered by it to be extraordinary. I believe human exploration of the moon and beyond has the potential and is already reawakening a universal interest by the public in space activity in most spacefaring nations, and even more so in those that have not yet become spacefaring nations. One of our jobs as a panel is to discuss ways in which we already are and can further nurture such interest. Over the years, space education panels have assessed this situation and made recommendations on how we could do better. Ideas have been presented as the outcome of concluding discussion groups of each summit. Some of our recommendations have come to pass. Many still need a focused collaborative effort by government, industry, not-for-profit organization, and education systems to make significant inroads. Some of this is starting to happen in space agencies and in large organizations representing international space activity, such as the International Astronautics Federation through its annual congresses, the United Nations Committee on the Peaceful Uses of Outer Space, UNESCO, and some of the organizations represented on this very panel. I should be particularly interested in hearing from panelists, perhaps in the discussion period of the panel, how pilot schemes can be converted to broad-based initiatives in education and outreach as the world readies itself for long-duration missions on the moon and beyond. Each panelist will give an introductory comment, and this will be followed by panel discussions of the various topics. Chris Barber is our first panelist to speak. Chris has had an interesting background in finance and school leadership before focusing on founding and directing the International Space School Education Trust, ISET, in 1998. He has since worked with astronauts and space scientists to inspire young people with face-to-face programs in the UK, USA, Russia, Norway, India, Mongolia, China, the Arctic, and Australia, and has established a range of astronaut-led leadership and team-building programs for executive and business schools. Chris, over to you.
Thank you, Carl. I thought I'd start off by outlining 5 of our main activities, which were going on pre-COVID, and then just, if I've got time, talk about how we've transitioned since the disastrous advent of the COVID pandemic. One of our major activities is we've been working in many places around the world on programs where we have astronauts and essentially world-class scientists working with young people, and at the end of that program, face-to-face, and at the end of that program, they give us presentations on their designs for experiments. We select 1 or 2, and we put them together with King's College London and put them on the space station. So far we've put on just over 40 biomedical experiments from young people, school students from around the world. We developed simulations for universities and businesses, which we've based on how NASA prepares its teams for incidents in space. And I've had a lot of help and work with Mike Fole on that. And our main simulation is focused on transferring his experience of the collision on Mir to what might happen on the space station if such an event happened. We have as you mentioned, we have a suite of business programs which we also provide, and we notably work with Cambridge University Business School and Duke. We carry on with lots of things in the communities, and prior to this year, prior to COVID, we did UK-wide tours of the UK for universities and communities and schools with Tony Antonelli, Mike Fole, and Steve Swanson. And Barbara Morgan would have joined us on one of these, except for our dear friend COVID. And luckily, we managed to squeeze in one last program, which we call Cosmonaut Training Program, which takes place at the Gagarin Cosmonaut Training Center at Star City. And we were so lucky because we finished on the Friday, and the following Monday, only the site was banned to non-essential personnel. So we were really fortunate with that. Since COVID, it was quite clear that we had to change. Our raison d'etre has been face-to-face and using the inspiration of people such as Bonnie to meet with young people and get over what I call the NASA You Can Do It spirit. The first program we switched to was a series of presentations during the UK lockdown, which went worldwide, from astronauts to really tell them their story, how they coped with any forms of isolation and work and being in space with small numbers of people, and giving an inspirational how you cope with this and how you move forward and plan for a better life by around about a dozen astronauts. We had several hundred youngsters around the world participate in that. We moved on to switching the mission discovery program, where youngsters follow a program and can get their experiments carried out on the space station. So we've switched that online with our launch prize program, and we've switched our business simulation and university training simulation online as well. So none of which has been without its challenges. And with me as a generally computer ham-fisted operator at the helm, that's added to the level of challenge for the rest of the team.
Okay, thank you very much, Chris, for that summary. We'll keep the questions and discussions until each panelist has had an opportunity to speak. Next up is Alex Blackwood, the CEO of the International Education Business Partnership Network, IPN. Alex is an education professional with expertise in education, business and community collaboration, in enterprise education, and the world work with specialism in STEM. The IPN, of which he is CEO, is an independent, not-for-profit global network of education, business, and community partnerships. It encourages and facilitates partnerships both at the local level and internationally. Alex, we look forward to hearing what you have to say. You're muted.
How's that?
That's better.
Good. Okay, welcome from Scotland. I'd like to start by saying that where I was coming from as a physicist and a mathematician and running an organisation in Scotland, which was about using the links between business and education to inspire young people, was quite broad. However, and it's interesting, and Georgia and Bonnie will remember this, is that it's actually 20 years ago today, almost to the day, that I first visited Houston and met George. I'd already met Bonnie in Scotland. And we talked about what our principles were, i.e. that schools can't do this stuff just on their own. They need external input to enhance and inspire young people. And so we talked about space community being able to do that. And that resulted in the establishment of the Scottish Space School. And we had dozens and dozens of engineers and scientists and astronauts visit Scotland and tour, talking to kids. And that was fine. Later that was moved to the University of Strathclyde in Glasgow. So I set up another business, and this was through the IPN, the International Partnership Network, which runs a conference every 2 years. And we when I left and started running that organization, we ran conferences for educators. The first one in 2010, which was in Toronto, Canada, and our guest speaker there was Chris Hadfield. And then we went to Durban, South Africa, and our guest speaker was Alvin Drew. And we've had lots of people. But the most important thing, I think, is that young people like space, and they get their link, and it makes them try to understand and become involved. I was also on a panel which looked at, it's called the case for space in the United Kingdom, when at the time the government in the United Kingdom were not in favour of human space flight. And so we wrote a paper, and I was asked to write a paper on the societal benefits of human space flight to young people, which I did and submitted. Because of the work of all of us, not just me, all of us who wrote that paper, the UK government changed their mind about human spaceflight and investment in human spaceflight. And of course, we now have our first UK official astronaut, Tim Peake. And that's really important, because when we talk to young people in schools, they're much more interested about human beings in space endeavours than they are about robotic endeavours. And it's just a natural human feeling. You relate one human being to another human being, young people to an adult. They want to aspire to be one of these people. And we use that to make sure that young people will study science, technology, engineering, and maths, because they're inspired by that space exploration, but particularly human space exploration. So that's what we do. We're now expanded to the international, and we do projects with Norway and South Africa and Canada and all over the place. And we bring people to Houston, and we bring young people to Houston. We bring teachers to Houston, and that's the purpose of that is simply that young people are inspired by it. And I think that people sometimes underestimate the fact that what that trigger has in terms of making young people more interested in science, technology, engineering, and maths. We've had to cancel 2 trips, and we were bringing Norwegians and young people from the United Arab Emirates to Houston just last month, but all of that was cancelled. But we've got a meeting, and we're going to look to 2021 to continue that international collaboration that we've already set up. But there is a stall because of our old friend COVID. But we will be back to continue to inspire young people by using space.
Thank you very much, Alex. I'd now like Ludmila Boravkova to be the next person to address us. She is with the Institute of Biomedical Problems, IBMP. She graduated from Moscow Medical University and obtained a PhD and a Doctor of Science degrees in space medicine. For 3 decades, she contributed as principal investigator, co-investigator, and team leader to the Space Station Mir and International Space Station. Since 2001, she has been a professor at Moscow State University and mentor of master's program Space Biomedical Research at the Faculty of Space Investigation. Now Ludmila is Deputy Director of IBMP and Head of the Cell Physiology Lab. She has received many awards for her work. Ludmila, we look forward to your comments.
Good morning, George. Good morning, Carl. Good evening, European participant and Russian participant. I would like to thank George for the organized educational panel. Carl and you are enthusiasts this panel, and some years ago I participated in United States in this panel, and now all of us participated online. Okay, we will adapt. And I would like to say about some educational activity. We use 3 steps, or maybe 3 levels of education. We try to involve young people, I mean school boys. We try to involve students, and many attention we pay to PhD students. Some experiment we carried out with company, energy company, and involve schoolboys. We contacted with our special club, Young Cosmonaut Club, and involve them to carry out the experimental work on International Space Station. For sure, our scientists, together with schoolboys, try to try to develop special equipment for plant experiment, for example. The experiment seeds, the experiment duckweed on International Space Station is very interesting, and with the result of this experiment, the schoolboys, the child, go through special space flight experiment competition. Each year, this participant goes through this competition, and it's interesting step for them. It's very important because they can exchange new knowledge, and it's very interesting to exchange this knowledge and receive some prizes. For child, for schoolboys, it's very important. And the next step is the student. Our institute very closely contact. We have special agreement with different chairs. For example, the chair of extreme medicine in Faculty of Basic Medicine, Moscow State University, you know, biggest university in Russia, and for physician, for future physician, it's very important, I believe, to know some specificity of the effect of spaceflight factor. And during COVID, also like many of you, we didn't organize some visits, for example, for Star City or even in our institute. But in any way, we try to let him knowledge about specificity of spaceflight factor. Maybe some of them will involve in this specific activity. Also, we have special agreement with the chair in Moscow Aviation Institute many years, and many students from this institute go through our institute and prepare master degree diploma. And I would like to say some new new approaches. In Moscow State University 2 years ago, we organized new faculty, Faculty of Space Investigation. Is not big faculty right now, but is very interesting for student new faculty. In this faculty, we organized a small department. The name of this department is biomedical research in space. And all students, 5 per year, visited in our institute in Star City. And in our institute, they have the mentors and involved in experimental research. During 2 years, they participate in different kinds of experiment, ground-based or flight experiment. And then after 2 years, go through an examination and receive master degree in space research. And many years, we pay more attention for PhD students. We have a special council for approving their PhD diploma. Our students' education for PhD is 4 years, and we have 30 students on different stage. Each year, we involve about 10 students. Each year, 10 new students. And they go through all aspects of space biomedicine, space biology, gravitational physiology, space microbiology and toxicology, enclosed habitat, medical support in space flight. All these problems, all these fields, we try to explain and show the risks, the problems, the approaches to countermeasure. So they involve in all activity in our institute. And I would like to mention additionally that in our institute, we try to support PhD students. We have special grant in our institute, and also Russian Fund for Basic Research give some special attention and give some special support to young researcher. The name of this project is My First Grant. They try to involve in scientific research and try to be head of the grant, head of the small team consists from, for example, from students. And also I agree with Alex and Chris that very important that young scientists participate in different kind of meetings, symposium, congress, and IAF and COSPAR assembly. It's very important for them to be in not only in the small team in the lab or in the institute, but in our scientific society. I mean, for example, space biomedicine. In our institute, we organize each year special conference for young scientists. It's maybe not so big meeting, but very important for young scientists. All of them make oral presentation, not poster, but oral presentation, and have the question and try to answer. So it's very good experience for young scientists. Unfortunately, in this situation, we couldn't organize a summer school for space biology and medicine, but I believe that this situation sometimes stop, and we continue to organize summer school. During this summer school, the student visited Moscow State University, Institute of Biomedical Program, Star City, and it's actually very interesting for students from different countries, from Europe, South America, North America, and many other countries. So I think that we we make good job, because without young scientists, without new generation, we couldn't continue our work, our science, and I believe that we will continue, and after this pandemic, we could exchange students, scientists, and I don't know how I could say English in English, but in each of us in our own country make this job, and we will do it, and we'll exchange our new idea. I also with big interest involved in this discussion, and some marked how to do it better. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Ludmila, for that perspective of what's going on in Russia. Francesco, you're next. Rocket propulsion engineer with significant experience in international space and aeronautics programs. Started in Italy with Alenia flight test and supported the Eurofighter flight test activities. And then during the space shuttle return, he joined the Boeing company as a responsible engineer for RCS reaction control system thrusters and as a member of the Prime Material Review Board. He's currently a technical lead engineer working on a variety of programs for Boeing, such as the Space Launch System 777X, KC-135, KC-46A, and B-1B. He recently completed CTS 100 Starliner service module hot firing test activities as test conductor. But his importance to us is as the executive director of the Foundation for International Space Education, which provides access and exposure of the space industry to students from around the world. Francesco, we're really interested to learn from you what's happening on the industrial side of this important field.
Yeah, thank you, Carl, and good morning, everybody. For those of you that are not familiar with the foundation, our major program is called United Space School, and we basically selected 50 to 55 students every year from about 25 different countries. And they start to work with, before they arrive in Houston, on preparatory assignments that has the aim to prepare them for the experience they're going to have. And then it culminates in the 2.5 weeks here in Houston, where they have full of activities. The students are put together to work on a project on space exploration. And typically in the past, we've been using Mars as the ultimate goals, but we've been changing things around according with the new vision that NASA had. So this year was particularly hard for us when the selection process, it ends in February, and that's, Europe was already struck with the virus. Here we got it a little later, but we hold it up to see what was going on, if we could still do it on in-person experience. And then we realized that it was not possible. So we dive into an effort to go full virtual, including those final 2 weeks that are very important. And we dive into the effort also because we thought by creating a virtual platform will also allow us to meet another objective of the foundation, which is reaching students that have little or no resources, for which will be impossible to travel to Houston. And so we package a new virtual platform. But see, for us, it was really complicated. First, we have to manage 12 different time zones, which makes interaction with students very challenging. And then we have to deal with a barrage of different problems, including, I don't know, a government internet shutdown in Ethiopia and things like that. But you know, we were able to put together a nice platform. We changed completely the subject. We decided to focus on asteroid. And so we had the team split into mining, manufacturing, and transportation to an asteroid. The program ended up to be very effective. And I think I can talk more about when, in the next part of the panel. This year we're facing the same situation here. So we still hope to make it in person. We do partnership with the University of Houston, Clear Lake for do class there. Last year they were completely shut down. We're waiting this year to make a decision if it's going to be in person or will remain completely virtual. So that's what we are with school.
Thank you, Francesco. It really looks as if COVID has had a major impact on the outreach of so many of the programs. Linda Godwin, I apologize, I skipped over you inadvertently because your image is behind Francesco on my screen. Linda was a long-term employee of NASA from 1980 to 2010, holding a variety of increasingly important positions at JSC in payload operations, as a flight controller, as an astronaut on 4 shuttle missions, and as deputy chief of the astronaut office. She also served as one of the first educational liaisons between the astronaut office and the NASA education office. Upon retirement from NASA, she entered academia as professor in the Department of Physics and Astronomy at the University of Missouri for 8 years. Linda, we look forward to hearing your comments, the first as an astronaut in this panel. Linda? Oh, we seem to have lost Linda from our screen.
I've still got her, Carl. She's still in the room.
Oh, okay, good. Can anybody hear her? I can't.
I can't hear her.
Okay, do you have me now?
Yes, we do. Thank you, Linda.
Interestingly, after listening to both sessions last week and all this morning with no problem, as soon as she started talking about me, everything froze. So I don't know what that signifies. It could be a bad omen. So I apologize. I actually missed the last part of that introduction, but just decided to close and rejoin, and it seems to have worked. All right, so I'm good to go here.
Yes, please go ahead, Linda. I've given an introduction of your background, and
Thank you.
I guess I indicated that you're actually our first ex-astronaut to be speaking in today's panel. We look forward to it.
But not the only one. There's some good people here coming up. I've enjoyed hearing everything else this morning. I'm pleased to be a part of it this year and to be invited back, and I sure hope we can see everybody next year. So when I was at NASA, it became pretty obvious that all of us in the space community are pretty much full-time outreach in some way to people's perception of NASA and STEM. So this is a big part of our lives. And I really enjoyed when I was at NASA working on some space curriculum and being part of the education working group. And after a long career there, I was pleased to come back to the University of Missouri and experience academia. I learned a whole lot more, like all of us do. So I'm just going to hit a few things today. Most of the students I see at the university are already in STEM, even now in my adjunct capacity, since I mostly retired a year and a half ago. But they're still, they're still so interested in space and that curriculum. But I've always been aware that we need all people to have a STEM interest because it impacts their lives in so many ways as we go forward in the future. And so for 8 semesters or so, maybe a little more, I taught a large class in Introduction to Astronomy for Gen Ed purposes that a lot of people could take as they thought astronomy sounded cool and they thought they'd learn something about space. And occasionally we would get some converts in there, they would say, I think I'll change my career, but I also just hope that we educated a lot of students on what science is and how important it is to them and what's going on. And because MU has a highly ranked journalism school, we get a lot of students hoping to get the journalism major, and they would take this class and they would come talk to me about how interested they were in writing about, what's going on. And I thought we really need that group of people too. So I really enjoyed working with a lot of those students. When One of the other classes here I've taught quite a bit and we'll teach online next semester is physics of space exploration, where we just talk about, we do some real life problems and just talk about all kinds of things and how we might travel around the solar system. And I get a lot of senior engineering majors and physics majors taking that class. And we have discussion topics and they do a semester project. And I'm always impressed and I always learn a lot more about what they're thinking about, you know, what they can also do a historical project. I hope they learn a lot about what it really means to be in the industry of exploring space. And, you know, what I have seen over the last few years is such tremendous interest in the private space industry as well as NASA. So that has provided a big boon, I think, in terms of interest in this career, as have right now the fact that we've been going through all these anniversaries for Apollo, ISS 20 years, and then going back to the moon has been huge. Many, many people interested in that. Also, I see a lot of students here applying for NASA internships. So that is a really important program and I wish they could bring more students into it. I know everything's limited, you know, for various accommodation issues and budget reasons. But we definitely have a lot of students here who are interested in applying for NASA internships. We had, in terms of the pandemic, that did, particularly in the spring semester, really things. I think like a lot of places, we've settled into a pace for the fall where we've kind of accommodated it. I've seen it impact, you know, the students I get to work with. I don't talk to as many student groups. We're still doing some things virtually. There's less one-on-one conversations with the undergraduates. University, unless they're there for classes, and we have a hybrid model right now going on, we really don't encourage even undergraduate research in the department very much this semester. So that has really limited how many people, how many young students that we're contacting one-on-one, but I think that's gonna change. One of the things that concerns me the most is the STEM gap that we have. You know, and we see it in our department, a lack of women and underrepresented minorities. And that's a tough thing to address. We have some outreach efforts going on, and we do get some women, but we're really always challenged, particularly on the underrepresented minorities. And there's some things that are going on in our department to address that in the future. We have one of our professors who's newly appointed to work with both our director of graduate studies and director of undergraduate studies to more proactively recruit more people into the department from those groups. That got impacted this year too, of course, even though they have reached out even in these COVID times to start doing some of their activities. And this is something I want to stay, you know, personally, it's a goal of mine to stay engaged with here in the community in which I live, just to try to get more students interested in this. And we get a lot of students who are very interested in STEM, but they really are hung up on the math. And so all of this has to start so much earlier than college. One effort we had here a few years ago, I was involved with this, a couple of us had a grant from PhysTech, which was a collaboration between the American Physical Society and Physics Teachers Education to put together programs to encourage more science majors to consider going back to high school education. And that's kind of a tough sell because that has its challenges. It has a salary differential that's not appealing. And I don't have any idea how we fix that, but we were successful in getting some students, once they tasted, if it kind of was their thing to go work with younger students and see their excitement, we actually did have some people who changed their mind and became some high school teachers, because what we've realized here is long before they get to college, and we have so many students who don't have a good high school experience, and it may depend on where they live, but there are many really good teachers whose background are maybe biology, and they're teaching the advanced physics class. So, you know, these are all things we need to think about addressing, and I know NASA has some initiatives helping in that direction too. One of the things this is a little bit outside of the topic, I guess, for today, but I just wanted to recognize that the Columbia Public Schools here a few years ago doubled the enrollment of minority students in some of their advanced placement courses through a one-year partnership with a group called Equal Opportunity Schools. So I see a lot of good things going on in our community to increase underrepresented student participation in STEM. And that just has to continue and has to increase. So I would just, you know, my experience, every time I'm with a group of students here, I talk to them, I see that there is so much interest in space, and there's interest in NASA, and there's interest in exploration. They're not always sure how they can connect with it, but I think it's our job to help them provide that connection. And mostly I see there's a lot of work to do to tell students of all types that there's a place for them, you know, in this world. And I know I work with a lot of people who are trying to make that happen. There's a lot of people on this panel and listening in that are trying to make that happen.
Well, thank you very much, Linda, for that insight. I'm sure that will stimulate discussions when we've done our first round. Michael Lembeck, Clinical Associate Professor in Aerospace Engineering Department at the University of Illinois. He's also the director of the Laboratory for Advanced Space Systems at Illinois, providing students with opportunities to design, build, and fly experimental CubeSat satellites. That's great, hands-on work. He has 40 years of experience in commercial space, in government contracting, and as a Requirements Division Director for the Explorations Systems Mission Directorate at NASA headquarters. He led, he led the development of requirements for the original Constellation Orion program. Michael, over to you.
Thank you, Carl. Good morning, everyone. I thought I'd start this morning by peripherally keeping with the theme of the conference and talk a little bit about some of the mitigations we're doing for COVID to help our students through this time period. And then end on a lighter note, talking about life after COVID and where we see that going for us. One of the critical things we've undertaken here at Illinois is a tremendous testing program. We now provide 3% of the entire nation's COVID testing right here on campus. As a result of that, we have a positivity rate of about 0.5%, while the surrounding communities around us are now peaking above 8%. So twice a week testing for students, once a week testing for faculty has really had an impact to allow us to try to stay on a more normal way of doing things. Nevertheless, there are issues that have developed. We still can't have large classrooms over 50 students getting together. So we've had to implement some mitigations to take care of that. And as Alex and Linda just talked about, it really helps to bring in people from industry. We have, fortunately, a number of astronaut alumni from Illinois. So for my undergraduate classes, I've been bringing them into our Zoom sessions to allow them to just talk for about 15 minutes on their trajectory of their careers, that life is still going on out there in the real world, and that there will be jobs and internship opportunities and so forth for our students as we move forward. I have learned that the new my dog ate the paper excuse is my dog ate the internet cable. We still suffer from a number of issues with faulty internet, international students that decided not to come back to campus but are participating remotely. Dealing with those time zone changes is a challenge. But overall, we're making it through that at the undergraduate level. At the graduate level, we have a program that I've instituted, Introduction to Human Spaceflight. And that's a direct result of my participation here on this panel. And I want to again thank Mr. Abbey for the opportunity here. Over the last couple of years, I've had the opportunity to sit down with Jim Voss, and he's developed a course at UC Boulder, which he shared with us here at Illinois. And we've taken that and have had quite a significant number of students now express an interest in it. As a result of that and our other astronauts, for instance, we've been able to have Mike Hopkins, who's getting ready to take a trip to the space station next week, reported from the Neutral Buoyancy Lab at the start of the semester, welcoming students in, challenging them to have a good semester, and promising to talk to us from orbit when he's up there. So that's been really good to have those more personal interactions with people in the field. At the lab level, where we're developing our CubeSats, that's probably where we've seen the most significant impact. Our clean room, we don't have a dimension greater than 6 feet in our clean room. So we've been restricted to 2 people at a time in there. I have been able to install a couple of cameras so I can remotely heckle our students while they're working in the lab. But overall, our efficiency is probably about 20% of what it's been. That necessarily has introduced schedule delays for our CubeSat launches. And fortunately, I want to compliment NASA and our launch provider, Nanoracks. They have been quite accommodating because I think they're seeing this across the entire system. And they're working with us to assign our flights for future missions. Looking ahead, I think the future is pretty bright for us here at Illinois anyway. We've been participating in a number of NASA opportunities. The Micro-G Next program down at JSC, which allows our students to develop actual flight hardware, take it down to the NBL and test it in the water tank with divers and astronauts, has been very successful. Our student team from a year ago presented a paper as a result of their work at the International Astronautics Conference in DC and took first place in the student division there based on their work. Our other teams, just getting that hands-on flavor, working with professionals in the field is invaluable for their career experiences. We also are working with NASA Space Grant. They fund us every year as they do many universities across the country. We are working with other universities here in the state of Illinois to develop online courses that will allow educators to reach out to high school students and beyond to get them interested in STEM education and attract them here to the university. As sort of an off-growth of that, the Department of Defense has also offered a STEM program, which we recently were awarded, a 3-year program that will allow us to, in the first year, develop a set of courses, kits, and competition that we will start to deploy nationally in the second year and hopefully turn it into a sustaining program in the third year. Our program is developed on something we did, a hands-on project in my undergraduate design course. It'll be called the Lunar or the Vertically Landed Rocket Challenge. We take a small Estes-like rocket up to 100 feet under a UAV, release it, and allow the rocket to descend naturally in soft land near a target. We will be developing the kits, that sort of hands-on stuff that high schools and college students can participate in. And then the competitions will be held at military bases across the country, again, trying to track students into the STEM environment that way. The last thing that I think we're working with, of course, is our CubeSats. I never had such an opportunity when I was coming through the system to actually put hands-on flight hardware and get them ready to go. We currently have 3 flight systems that we're developing. 2 more in formulation. We're working with the National Lab on a dark matter experiment, which is exciting and potential Nobel work. So that's really attractive to the students to bring them into this kind of environment. Last but not least, we're working with the 4-H extension groups here. We talked about, Linda talked about outreach and such. With the 4-H group, we can reach out to high school students that have an interest in space. We are formulating a 1U CubeSat, and our high school students are the stakeholders in this, coming in, telling us what their requirements would be for doing experiments in space. And we hope to deploy these CubeSats in the coming years into all the high schools here in Illinois to work about. So that's kind of how things look right now. It's very bright. The opportunities provided by NASA and the DoD for us are very strong. And I think once we overcome the pandemic, we'll be back up and running and producing the next generation of engineers for the field. So thank you.
Thank you, Michael, for that comprehensive overview. I don't see Stephen Robinson in any of the pictures. Is he here? No? Well, let's move on.
Yes,
then.
I am.
Oh, there you are.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hello, Carl. Hello, everyone.
Let me introduce you first. 37-year veteran of NASA. He's really held an eclectic positions, from machinist to lab technician to engineer to research scientist to branch chief, safety representative, and astronaut. 17 years, 4 missions. He's now a tenured professor at UC Davis and director of the UC Davis Center for Spaceflight Research. He also directs the UC Davis Human Robotic Vehicle Integration and Performance Lab, which is preparing the next generation of graduate and undergraduate students for a wide range of space missions. Stephen, over to you.
Thanks very much, Carl. Hello, everybody from California. And I want to thank Mr. Abbey for pulling us together. When I look at the participants list just now. We all know each other. It's wonderful, and we wouldn't be getting together without Mr. Ase's vision and his dedication to this kind of communication that we all count on to keep our community together, even in these times when we're not right there in Houston where we want to be. Well, it's hard to say anything that hasn't been said before. I think Linda especially said everything I had planned to say, so I'll keep my remarks very short. So I've been in the academic business now for 8 years, and what I have seen during those years is a concerted change in students, both undergrads and graduates, move towards spaceflight engineering, even more, quite a bit more so than before. When I started, about a third of the students in our department, which is a combined mechanical and aerospace engineering department, about a third of the students were interested in spaceflight engineering, and now it's probably over 2/3, just in rough terms. This is a great opportunity. It's happening almost, without our beyond our efforts, and then the students come to us, and it's our opportunity and challenge to take advantage of their fascination and their passion that they arrive with. But we have a very poor, especially gender balance in aerospace engineering. In our department, I think over the last few years, we've gone from 17% women to about 20% women. And we brag about that. That's terrible. It should be much better. And, I think to do that, we have to, as several people have said, it's very important to reach out to younger students before social pressures and other influences have changed the interest in STEM fields in kids. And so we have a pretty significant outreach program from our department called SOAR, S-O-A-R, STEM Outreach and Academic Reinforcement. And we just target 5th graders. And not so much to sell aerospace, but to allow college students to mentor and role model for 5th graders. Not professors, but so they can see how they themselves might be just in just a few years, and that seems to be pretty successful. And of course, we're all challenged by remote teaching here, but I feel that remote learning for the students, as adaptable and flexible and quick to embrace technology as they are, remote learning is, I think, harder than remote teaching, at least in engineering. Now that depends, of course, on whether you're writing equations or building CubeSats in Mike's labs. Can change things a lot. We're now installing equipment for research in students' homes. We've got robot arms on kitchen tables. We've got eye tracking, people using them in their cars and on their bikes, and so we're still trying to keep the hands-on aspect alive. We buy, fabrication equipment for people to have at their homes. And we have very strong and active teams together who are thousands of miles away from each other. And I think that's part of the silver lining of this challenge that we've been going through here. So that's all I'll say for now. Thanks again for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you, Stephen. We'll move now to Salazan Sharikovich Sharipov joining us from Russia. He is a co-author and investigator of the Advanced Diagnostic Ultrasound and Microgravity Project. He's been in space twice, launched from the US as an astronaut in 1998 and from Russia as a cosmonaut in 2004. And he's conducted 2 spacewalks. He retired in 2008. Currently, he's the head of Youth Education Center, Cosmo Center in GCTC. Salazan. You need to unmute your mic. Your mic is muted. Now we can hear you.
Do you hear me now? Yes. Yes, you can hear me now, right?
Yes.
Yes, we can hear you. Yes.
Let me just say to the listeners,
Здравствуйте, дорогие друзья. Доктор
Dr. Abby, my friends Bonnie, Carl, I am so happy to greet you all from GCTC, a star city of Moscow region. In 2020, the first crew celebrated 60 years, and that was the unique place where all of that started for the Soviet cosmonautics. And the center is continuing in this road to prepare people for space. The center is well known in the whole world because this is a place where successfully training not only Russian but foreign cosmonauts and astronauts. And there are different disciplines are being trained here, and the simulators are available to train for flying on ISS. The best resource of the contemporary society is the youth. The education. Education is most important. We have to understand that the future of the country, future of the world is relying on the youth, on technologies, on future progress. When a person understands what a person wants and assesses the realization of the plans, then they need to make the right choice. The choice that would allow a young person to participate in the path that they have chosen. And a space theme is very important right here because it also embraces a lot of disciplines, and also it has to do with intercommunication of people, and it is important to provide new programs, engineering programs that will be tied to ISS. Professional orientation is a priority for our center. This center is based at the GCTC. The help in orientation and choice of profession in the field is done via providing opportunities and exposing them to various professions and various fields. Of course, it is becoming more and more difficult with the pandemic circumstances right now. As of today, the specialists of the center are moving to the new format, and we are using technologies, of course, here. So we are using video conferences, and we have various lectures performed in this manner, and also competitions. So we are providing individual meetings online with instructors and cosmonauts. So they learn more about space professions and get consultations and are able to ask questions concerning their choice of profession. As to the format that we are working in right now, the specialists of our Center for this kind of activity using exact specific simulators, that is docking simulators, the control room simulators, and other means that allow the guys to get excited about what they are learning. All of that is opening up the potential of a child and creative abilities that allows them to make the educated choice on their future. That is how we're trying to ignite the interest in our audience and try them to engage in the technologies here. We hope that this type of approach will bring to they bring students to our field. And we're inviting everybody to our center based at the GCTC. To learn this about this, you can use our site, which is called GCTC.ru. If we talk about our activity in general of our space center, last year we had almost 800 tours and educational programs that included electronic and practical lessons using the simulators at the center. About 30,000 students have gone through our program last year. This year, because of the situation that we all know, it is all difficult. Before March, we only had 65 tours and 36 educational programs implemented. We hope that when the pandemic is over, we will be able to complete what we have planned. We all understand it is very important for future generations, so for them to actually meet in person as well, and so that they will be able to become such high-class specialists as our astronauts, cosmonauts, our teachers, our professors, our instructors. That's what I wanted to tell you today, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Salazan, very interesting. Our final panelist is Andy Turnage from the USA. He's the Executive Director of the Association of Space Explorers, and he's been there since May 1995. That's a long time. And it's the world's only professional association of flown astronauts and cosmonauts. This association has become an important vehicle of outreach on all matters associated with human spaceflight and space exploration. Its international nature helps bridge gaps between various space agencies of the world, governments, industry, and the public. And Andy has been absolutely instrumental to its development. Andy, over to you.
Carl, thank you very much. How do you read? How do you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Good, great, thank you. So hello everyone. Всем здравствуйте. Доброе утро, добрый день, добрый вечер. Thank you, Carl and Bonnie, for the opportunity to join you this morning for this important panel on education. And thanks also to George, the Baker Institute, and Rice University for their efforts to produce what has turned out to be a wonderful symposium every year. Unfortunately, we didn't get a chance to meet in person this year, but hopefully we'll have better luck next year. So as Carl noted, I'm Andy Turnage. I'm the Executive Director of the Association of Space Explorers, and ASC is an international, nonprofit, professional, technical, and educational association of flown astronauts and cosmonauts. So we were founded by a small group of astronauts and cosmonauts from 13 nations who met in a very small castle in Cernay, France in 1985 and decided to form this organization. And we now number over 400 astronauts and cosmonauts from 38 different countries. So our mission is to deliver the astronaut perspective, to inspire the next generation of space travelers, by supporting education in STEM subjects, by promoting the benefits of space science and exploration, and by promoting international cooperation in space. For us, as for everyone else, it's been a very challenging year. 2020 has been a destructive year. It's been destructive to health. It's been destructive to livelihoods. And it's been really highly distractive to our efforts to educate, inspire, and engage our youth. Lots of kids are out doing hybrid learning. They're in classrooms, they're out of classrooms. A lot of chaos right now. And I think folks are looking for direction and how to find creative ways to keep these kids engaged. And I think, like a lot of the folks here on this panel, we recognize that this year especially we need to be creative about finding ways to engage those kids. And the challenges I think that we face beyond COVID and beyond this year, but really perennially, is the challenge in the disparity of the tools available to really inspire and engage all of the students that we have the potential to reach, not just in Houston, not just in Texas, not just the United States, but all over the world. I don't speak so much of the disparity of tools available to us to deliver our STEM content, because there's a lot of great organizations out there, many of them represented right here on this panel, who are delivering great STEM content. But I speak more about the availability of, or the disparity of resources available to the students across the globe who want to receive that content. Not every student has a computer or an iPad or even access to the internet. We have, like I said, lots of great content to deliver, but limited ways to deliver it to all of the students who would benefit from access to it. And part of our mission here at the Association of Space Explorers is to democratize space, make space a place that enfranchises everybody, not just a limited number of folks that are engaged in very specialized fields. And if we want to democratize space, we need to democratize the resources available for students to receive the content that we want to deliver to them. Not every student has an iPad or a computer or internet connection, but one thing every student does have is a teacher. And we here at ASE, like many of you on this panel, have discovered that we can have sometimes a greater impact by reaching out to, inspiring, and mentoring teachers in STEM subjects. Using the language of the pandemic, if we can create a situation where our value, the replication value, or in this case, our inspiration value, if our inspiration value is greater than our not, then we're achieving what we set out to do and enfranchising as many students as we possibly can. Everyone here remembers their favorite teacher. Some of you, many of you, maybe all of you here on this panel, you are somebody's favorite teacher. So we really feel that the teachers are the mechanism by which we can have the most impact to inspire students all across the globe, not just this year, but throughout the future. So one of the programs that ASE runs, one of the STEM programs that we run in cooperation with Because Learning, our educational partner, is called Ase Astral School. And we reach out to teachers and we fund over 100 teachers in 2 cohorts, so 2 cohorts of 50 teachers each, to participate in this Ase Astral School, which trains teachers how to better teach STEM subjects. The teachers use state-of-the-art hands-on learning tools. They engage with each other in online collaborative learning environment, and they receive professional credits for completing the program. ASE is also currently publishing an online program for kids based on Clay Anderson's book, A is for Astronauts. So our astronauts are reading every letter of the alphabet and how those concepts relate to aerospace and STEM education. So we have found that engaging with the teachers allows us to reach a greater number of students in any given evolution. We want to inspire a teacher and help them find creative ways to inspire their students. And I'll just give a shout out to my old friend Alec over there in Scotland, who has just done a fantastic job of bringing communities of teachers together, not just from Scotland, but from all over the world, and inspiring them and teaching them and mentoring them how to best engage with their students for our collective goals. So again, it's a pity that we couldn't have lunch together this year, but looking forward to seeing you all in 2021. Thanks.
Andy, thank you
Thanks,
so
Andy.
Andy, thank you so much for that comment. I think the overall themes that have come out of the panelists have been quite interesting. Each group is doing its best within its environment to have an influence and is successful. But there's an integrated effect that seems, I keep on hearing, is missing, whether it's for reaching minority groups, reaching teachers in a sort of collective way how can we integrate all these ground-sourced activities which are successful into a whole that is more worldwide in its reach. I particularly liked the ideas of the teachers that Andy just brought up. And I'll just illustrate perhaps a point, because this has been addressed by UNESCO and many other places. I'll illustrate it from the period when I was at the International Space University. We ran a 9-week summer program, and Canada in particular, as one of the students that they would encourage to participate in the program, always tried to find a teacher amongst this group of 6 people or so and send them along. Those teachers became ambassadors in their own teaching community for greater involvement of space activity in the STEM curriculum and so on. And if this were pursued in a wide variety of programs in courses, short courses, Alex, I know you're doing some of this sort of activity as well. I think we would have a huge influence on getting this outreach into the young people to get them interested moving forward. I'd be interested in hearing comments from any of the panelists on the way in which we can integrate these individual efforts into something that is a cohesive international whole. Any takers? Alex, go ahead.
Okay, yeah. Well, first of all, I think interesting what Andy was saying there, and it's really important, about particularly about teachers and the international connections, etc. But one of the things that I think is that it's not just about the quality of teaching and the understanding of STEM. It's also about how teachers can stimulate young people by the way they talk and the way they act. And I've seen it a lot of, particularly through people who are talking at conferences that come from NASA or wherever else. It's how they inspire people rather than necessarily about the knowledge of the subject that they have, that the understanding about what their impact is on young people. I mean, it does remind me of a situation in my own situation where a physics teacher that I had took my breath away by simply saying something like, you should go to university, you should do this. I mean, it's not just about the knowledge of the science or the technology, it's about the understanding of what influence these people have on young people by who they are and how they act. And I would say to anybody when we go to conferences, international conferences, and I always say to people who are our guest speakers, this is about who you are rather than what you know. This is about what you've done rather than what you're teaching. This is about you. This is about you inspiring people. And I think that is really, really important. I think a lot of the stuff that we do and a lot of stuff we've been involved in, whether it's through our space school or whether it's through our conferences, even including ASE, is that people listen and get inspired. And there's nothing that we can do which is more important than be explaining to people how they can change their lives by listening to people who have done inspirational things. That's what I would say.
Bonnie, do you want to have any comments on this?
Well, I think it is a combination. I look back at my own inspiration, if you will, coming from a cattle ranch in eastern Washington State. And it really was the Apollo program and seeing it on TV in black and white, okay? And being inspired with that whether it was Walter Cronkite or Jules Bergman or hearing from the NASA people. So you also have to provide that future image. You provide pictures to students about what is out there, what we don't know. I see that in my own classes as well. You of course have to have good teachers, but teachers that are also inspired and cared. So, you know, I go back to my physics teacher who it actually suggested engineering. I didn't even know what it was. So right now, one of our challenges, and Alex probably agrees because I've been over and participated in this program, is just teaching kids and teachers that there are professions out there that actually do build rockets and go to space, and what's the pathway to get there. And I think that was brought up a little bit earlier too. That pathway starts in middle school. If you don't start acquiring the math skills, and we see this at Texas A&M as well. We've got a great student body and high standards, but sometimes we have to take you know, outstanding A students and do some what we call remedial math, but you know, really focus back on algebra and pre-calculus skills that may be very smart students, but maybe they didn't have a teacher in that area actually in the school, so someone else taught it as a second class. So we got to strengthen our math skills down in the K-12, and then we also need to ensure that our students are getting an adequate education that they would qualify to study these topics at the university level. But inspiration is sometimes part of it, looking at the sky, seeing someone who's been there. You know, who knows how that connection actually happens.
Thank you, Bonnie. Linda, you mentioned the how you've noted that the moon exploration concept is really stimulating the young people that you come into contact with. How can we internationalize this interest? What tools should we be using so that this interest can really flourish in all parts of the world?
Well, of course, we have, you know, an international group of people associated with spaceflight, you know, so we have those ways to reach around the world. And a lot of it, you know, maybe some of it's just bringing it to the forefront of what are the best points to make when you're out engaging with the public. You know, how do you do this? How do you feed it to the international news media such that it sounds exciting and they're going to pick up on it? I mean, you know, I used to give this, you know, question when I would just, you know, teaching a class, particularly general education, how long has it been since we've been to the moon? And the large majority have no idea. They think we actually maybe were there 2 weeks ago, you know, for all they know. So this is what you've got to deal with when you're talking about going back to the moon and realizing this is really hard to do, but here's how we're doing it this time. Here's how we're putting it together. We're using international cooperation. You know, I know we just signed, I think, an Ase agreement. Maybe it was already in work, but pretty recently, you know, on the lunar outpost whole design and everything. So I don't know. I mean, I think it's reaching the teachers, it's reaching the media, it's utilizing the worldwide network we already have. But I mean, this ought to be really exciting because we haven't been out of Earth orbit for so long. So there needs to be a way to engage our students. And, you know, the science part of that is understanding why is it so difficult to do that and what are the challenges? And there are a lot of teaching opportunities with that too. And it goes with getting the educators interested. I agree, you know, what Bonnie said about how do you get interested? You know, we got interested before we had all this, although we did have our black and white TV, and it was such a unique thing that it was covered on the news. Now it's difficult to break into the news cycle, you know, even when you're going back to the moon. And maybe it's the back to that's kind of it, because, oh, haven't we been there before? But this is a whole new way of going back, and somehow we have to get that out there.
Thank you. Bonnie, I see we got a number of Q&A registrations. Are there anything you'd like us to be addressing?
Yes, this is actually one that has come up recently and is very pertinent to the International Space Medicine Summit. It comes from Dr. Sue Bloomfield. And that was that she did recently attended the American Society for Gravitational Space Research. And there was a plea for more funded fellowships for doctoral students. And I heard our colleague from IBMP also talk about this. So it's all part of the whole pipeline. There used to be a program like this with NASA and other supporting agencies. With that funding was discontinued as of 2017. So what's happening in the other space agencies or the US in terms of looking at the postdoctoral fellowships so that we have some continuity as we go forward, particularly when we're talking about actually going to Mars in 2035. So we need to have this continual pipeline filled. Any thoughts?
Bonnie, I think I have one concrete proposal that could address this and perhaps Carl's first question. And that would be based on an existing model. In government contracting today, we have small and disadvantaged business set-asides where we try to, as we say in Illinois, grow our own seed corn and develop new opportunities for folks that don't necessarily have direct access to large government contracts. And I think it's time, or could be time, where a similar set-aside could be put into these contracts, particularly the NASA contracts, that would have a small percentage go towards establishing these fellowships, postdoc opportunities, and other types of resources that would help STEM students participate not only in the existing programs, but to develop the pipeline for the future generations. And if we did that, we could go a long way towards providing some resources in a concrete fashion. And similarly, I think we have to open up the doors from the commercial folks that are coming online. Commercial space needs to be encouraged to set aside resources for educational purposes, for internships, and bring along that next generation.
Mm-hmm. Well, definitely, there needs to be a feedback mechanism to get this back into the agencies and those who hold the resources. I know the program that Sue's talking about was actually a joint program between MIT and Texas A&M, and we produced quite a few students that went on into the NASA pipeline. There's a question or a suggestion here that we consider actually extending the discussion on the pipeline and STEM to extending the ISMS panels perhaps next year based on some meetings that actually Mr. Abbey had attended in the Global Space Innovation Online event, which went, I think, around the world for 24 hours, included folks from Scotland, Canada, UK, and Germany. So, you know, maybe how do the panelists feel about really getting into depth and extending this session next year?
Bonnie, I think it's a great idea. I think, and this gets back to Carl's comment about an integrative approach to solving some of these problems that we're having with these pipelines and this dearth of technical ability that's coming out of our universities right now to support future exploration. And I think that the more groups that we get involved with a panel like this, the better. One of the problems that I have with the structure of the conferences that are available, I think, to many of the teachers, particularly here in the United States, is that we spend a lot of time talking at each other and not to each other. People get up and make presentations, people listen, they go at the end of the day, but there's no real integrated, collaborative set aside for people to sit down, talk face to face, and decide how they can create synergies to solve some of these problems. And I would like to suggest that we also invite the Space Explorers group from CASIS down in Florida. It's a large group of nonprofit STEM-oriented organizations. And they get together once a year and they talk to each other, not at each other, about how they can create those synergies. And I think that would be a valuable addition to what we're doing here at ISMS. Over.
Andy, let me ask a question on that one. Do you think that something like the IAC, the International Astronautical Congress, could host a workshop that people could participate in, maybe lasting a couple of days, as part and parcel of a larger international congress of this nature?
I think so. They've got the resources. They've got the recognition. There are a lot of opportunities for folks to listen to other inspiring subject matter sessions at IAC. But I think if we can convince Christian and the IAF to put together a teacher workshop, I think that would be very helpful. U.S. Space Foundation, I guess they're just now Space Foundation, used to have teacher workshops, and I don't know what the status of that is now, but I thought that those were also very valuable evolutions.
Bonnie, over to you again.
Yeah, so I'm taking some notes here. I think there's an opportunity to expand our participation, and especially on an international level. We had, I hope that those of you who will be attending the breakout sessions will bring your ideas to that as well, which we'll have a little bit later. But we do come out with a document is a compilation of suggestions. And in fact, you know, Carl, we've over the last few years consolidated some comments that maybe it's time that we can find mechanisms to implement them. I think you have a summary of some of those from last year.
Yeah, that's right. I don't know if we should hold that until
Probably till
the next session. Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
But it is sort of we have this opportunity to share notes, and the members of the panel are doing outstanding work in their particular positions. That's why we asked you to share your experiences both in normal times and in COVID times. And it's time that we find a way to take all of these best practices and experiences and implement them more on a global scale, but get the support to do it as well. Has been one of the challenges.
Could I just add that, I mean, listening to people on the panel and thinking about the work we've done and others have done, would it be possible, and we maybe come back to George and the Baker Institute on this, to actually set up some kind of space educational community whereby straight off, instead of meeting once a year and listening to people and maybe just communicating with each other as individuals, it might be possible to have a community whereby people can put into this their ideas for development, and other people can join in and say how they can help, and create a network that self-helps each other to develop further activities which are more combined and really move forward as one community, knowing what everybody else is doing on a continual basis. Because it's always great to make contact with everybody, but maintaining all of those individual contacts can be quite difficult, whereas a community allows people to dip in and help other people as they think they can contribute.
Well, we have a comment here from International Space University, loving the idea of teach the teachers, and ISU may be willing to and able to participate in some way. So it sounds like we ought to at least start a catalog of all the various organizations that could collaborate together. Certainly having a collaboration of other organizations is something we do all the time within the space industry, but I don't know that we've ever done it on an educational basis, more informally, unless someone from the panel has some thoughts or information I don't have. Alec, you're in the middle of this. Do you?
Sorry, yeah, really, obviously the organisation I run, the International Education Business Partnership Network, and we do, everything is about international collaboration, everything. And STEM is really forthright in all of that. So yeah, we would be really, really interested in making some sort of connection that this kind of space education community on an international basis can actually come together. And we'd be happy to be part of that facilitation. Unfortunately, our conference this year was supposed to be in Melbourne, Australia, right? But that was cancelled, obviously, for obvious reasons. But we always have space and education as a central part of it. And we would be happy to come together with whoever wishes to kind of do that, and making a connection, an international connection about education in space, because I think it's really important.
Well, we will probably have to table some of that for our breakout sessions a little bit later. I think that we have time for just maybe a few round of parting comments. Carl?
Okay, thank you very much. I think we've had a good session. We've covered a wide variety of topics associated with education. And as always, we touched on the whole question of outreach as well. And these two are intimately linked together. Outreach, education, both are necessary. I think we have a number of tools which have been expressed and displayed by the panelists in many parts of the world. And if we can integrate these through some other fora, that would be very helpful so that we can move forward. I do like the idea that George Abbey raised of maybe a vehicle such as ISMS in a different format, or the IAC, or other vehicles. And maybe this is the thing that we can discuss in the breakout session, and then start approaching some of these organizations that do have international reach to see if they would be willing to take this on as a multi-year effort, and thereby allow us to get together and to be more effective as a whole. I thank you all for your participation. I think it's really been helpful to us to hear your comments, and pass it over to Bonnie for any closing comments she might have.
Well, I thank you for your participation. We know it takes time out of your day, and we're in many different time zones, so don't be major. But thank you, and thank you, Mr. Abbey, for your continued support and vision in pulling us all together. Once again, we extend our deep gratitude, so thank you.